to Fort Fritz, your one-stop for news, current events, and all forms of entertainment relating to the paranormal, the supernatural, the Fortean, and things that go bump in the night, all packaged and presented in the form of know-nothing know-it-alls, entertaining the unknown. Hello, I'm Fritz, and for the next hour, I will be your host as we take a crack and listen back to some of our finer moments on Fort Fritz. Today, Real Radio 104.1 was over at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, so I thought, let's start off with one of our space stories. This is Clark McClellan's 9-Foot Alien and NASA. You can find it on the iHeartRadio app. Just download it. Search Fort Fritz or Fort Fritz Campfire Tales. This one was written by Angela.
Thank you.
Have you guys ever heard of Clark C. McClelland?
Ooh,
No.
not at all.
But he sounds like a Texas oil
I was going to say,
billionaire,
like a gun shooter.
Clark McClellan, I'm
Gunfighter.
here to buy your daughter.
Very jaunty name.
Buy your daughter.
He's a billionaire. He can do what he wants.
So you buy people's children?
I don't know. That's maybe that was.
If you were a billionaire, you'd try it.
Also, daughters should have dowries, I guess, if you're going to
I guess
back in that time. Anyway,
Right.
Clark C. McClelland is an aerospace engineer. He was assigned to the National Space Program in 1958 in Cape Canaveral, Florida, and has been involved in 673 rocket and spacecraft launches. Him and other spacecraft operators performed extensive technical monitoring of simulated flights and mission objectives to ensure orbital success while also maintaining personal safety of the astronauts. So Clark C. McClelland, he was involved in Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo lunar landings.
Wow.
His name is on all 3 commemorative monuments for these missions.
Oh, wow.
He was technical assistant to the Apollo program manager. Assistant to the Apollo program manager during the Apollo moon landings. He was also involved in Skylab, which is the United States' first and only space station orbiting the Earth from 1973 to 1979, when it fell back to Earth, which was quite an international media event.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you
People
heard
were
about
worried.
that.
People were worried it was going to come down on them.
Well, it was supposed to land in Cape Town, South Africa, and then it ended up landing in Australia, which is vastly different. Totally
also
messed that up.
a whole lot of nothing down there.
Yeah, true.
Just a bunch of Australians.
They actually had some funny things about giving people money if they found pieces of debris in their yard.
Really?
Yeah.
So this guy is
He's a
has
smart
a
man.
solid reputation, well respected in his
He's
field.
legit. He was, when the Challenger fell apart in 1986, that was only 73 seconds into flight. He knew many of the astronauts on that flight, and from then on, he did all that he could to not let such a disaster happen again. In 1960, he was selected by Major Donald E. Kehoe, who was the International Director of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena.
Ooh.
And he was...
How do you get that job?
He was selected by him to be the unit director for the committee at the Kennedy Space Center and the whole Central Florida region.
You are an extremely smart and reliable aerospace engineer.
And he worked there for years.
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 Yeah, he was there from 1958 to 1992.
Ooh.
And then later, he was chosen as the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, director at Kennedy Space Center, and the assistant state director for all of Florida.
Wow. For MUFON, huh?
For
Yeah.
MUFON. Shout out.
He has 60 plus years of studying the field of ufology or ufology,
Ufology, yo.
which is the study of UFOs. So he has seen quite a lot of questionable things in his time at NASA and all of the programs he was a part of, but the one sighting in 1991 is the one you will hear him talk about the most.
Okay.
And if you go to, I watch his YouTube videos, www.stargate-chronicles.com. That's how he says it.
Hyphen Chronicles?
Yeah. So Stargate.
The symbol
chronicles.com.
hyphen, not
Yes.
the word hyphen.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. I'm going to read what he actually wrote because it's from his exact words. I, Clark C. McClelland, former SCO, which stands for Spacecraft Operator, Space Shuttle Fleet, personally observed an 8 to 9 foot tall extraterrestrial on my 27-inch video monitors while on duty in the Kennedy Space Center Launch Control Center.
What?
The extraterrestrial was standing upright in the Space Shuttle payload bay having a discussion with 2 tethered U.S. NASA astronauts. I also observed on my monitors the spacecraft of the extraterrestrial as it was in a stabilized, safe orbit to the rear of the Space Shuttle main engine pods. I observed this incident for about 1 minute and 7 seconds.
Wow.
Plenty of
That's a long
time
time
to
to think
memorize that I was observing. It was an extraterrestrial, an alien starship.
Wow.
Holy sh!
just stop you. What did you envision when you see the creature? Because I automatically thought the creature from The Shape of Water.
Really?
Standing there in mid of space. I just saw
I thought it like a gray. I got like a gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gray? Okay.
It was more something out of like the cantina from Star Wars, like a beige color. But I mean, that conversation though, what was it like? You guys seen the latest season of Peaky Blinders? I don't know.
Is it out already? It is on Mars.
Not in 1991.
Bang.
Oh, in 91,
Get
burn.
checked.
It was a tall creature about 8 to 9 feet tall. It had a humanoid body shape with 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 feet, a slim torso, and a normal-sized head for its size. The color of its skin I could not determine. It appeared to have eyes, but it was not detailed enough for any other comments. How did it communicate? I have no idea. It did move its arms a lot, almost like giving instructions. I heard no voice communications. The helmet was not as large as our 2 NASA astronauts and had a viewport to look forward. It had small, perhaps communication device attached only to the right side of the helmet.
Wow.
I saw no oxygen tanks. It had a wide belt wrapping around it. It did not appear to be tethered as the 2 astronauts were to the sides of the shuttle. I observed nothing that appeared to be a weapon. The time of this amazing scene was 1 minute and 7 seconds. I timed it on my astronaut chronograph watch.
Ooh.
Not just his watch, his astronaut watch.
A friend of mine later contacted me and said that this person had also observed an 8 to 9 foot tall extraterrestrial inside the space shuttle crew compartment. Yes, inside our shuttle. Both missions were Pentagon top secret encounters. With my verifiable background, there is no federal government agency that can say I'm crazy. Signed, Clark.
Except for every government.
Everybody.
He's crazy.
Including, who are the 2 guys? Yeah, the 2 guys who are talking to the alien. It's like, did
I
they
was
come in
gonna
the
say,
shuttle?
I feel like we could probably figure that out, right? Like, he says it's 91.
Yeah.
He said
Check
where
the
he's.
crew manifest.
We could, because I was looking up everything and I could not find where it said which mission, which expedition,
Right.
which ship it was.
I think we could do a little bit of sleuthing and figure this out.
And also, if the alien was talking to 2 astronauts, didn't anyone ask, like, those astronauts that the alien was
That's
talking
exactly.
to?
That's what we
like
want
when
to
they
talk
come
about.
in from the spacewalk. So what happened? Nothing, just a normal spacewalk. Really? No 8 foot tall aliens? Nope, totally no 8 foot. I'm just gonna go back here and do some work on the futzer. Okay, I mean,
There are a lot of questions. And this guy has, like, a bunch of YouTube videos talking about this encounter and other encounters, and a bunch of different websites.
the fact that he used a movie title for his website
Yeah,
also
it's-
is like
How do you
annoying
know
to
it
me.
wasn't the other way around?
It's all the Stargate Chronicles. But that's true. It could have been the other way around. And all of his websites basically have, like, the same verbiage on them, just, like, different formats. And one of the things, because he's always talking about, like, there's aliens out there, he said on one of them, he said, the Bible, best-selling book of all ages, has numerous events recorded by writers of the gospel telling of unique aerial objects that defy imagination. The book of Ezekiel describes one such object as a wheel intersection a wheel, and bright lights and flashing and a windstorm as it landed.
Wow. And another flying object as one that my dog caught in its mouth on a sunny day in the park.
And Jesus spake unto Ezekiel, bro,
Throw this
go get my frisbee.
Also on his site, he says that recently former NASA astronaut and moonwalker of Apollo 14, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, publicly expressed his opinion that he was 90% sure that many of the thousands of identified flying objects or UFOs recorded since the 1940s belonged to visitors from other planets. And this is a guy that was, like, on Apollo 14. Dr. Mitchell also stated he has spoken to several highly placed people, apparently in Washington, D.C. and or the Pentagon, who said that the famous Roswell UFO crash did actually happen, and that indeed the craft was of alien origin. In company with Dr. Mitchell, other famous NASA astronauts have stated their positive belief. Among them, retired Colonel L. Gordon Cooper, who had a sighting of his own, an exclusive member of the original 7 astronauts, and the first to publicly state to the United Nations his belief in the existence of UFOs. So because of his UFO whistleblowing, McClellan claims that the U.S. government has stripped him of his pension and forced him to live on Social Security, despite the fact that he has served on 673 NASA missions. He posts YouTube videos asking the public to take him seriously, that he loves this planet, our human race, and that he's trying to serve us.
673 NASA missions?
That's a lot.
insane.
You do not allow an insane person to operate that amount of budget, machinery, people, time,
Right.
like that. There's a lot of vetting that goes into being someone at that position.
You hope.
Right?
You hope.
There is. This man was a decorated, proven member of the aeronautic space community, and then comes out and says, "Hey, I saw an alien." They're like, "Nope, never mind. He's a whack job. Kick him out of here."
He did something to tick someone off, and they screwed him so badly that he was like, "Okay, you're gonna screw me. I'm gonna screw you."
I'm gonna tell him about the
I'm gonna
aliens.
tell him about
Dude,
the
don't.
aliens.
We said we wouldn't.
Oh man, you said you were cool, man. This whole time you said you were cool.
Nah.
This poor guy does all these YouTube videos just like pleading for people. He's like, I need help.
We
they
believe
took
you,
away
Clark.
all my
here for
pension.
you.
I'm living on Social Security. And if you look him up, like you don't see him on any official websites
Really?
ever. So
They
I'm not
just erased
sure.
him.
Wait.
You're listening to Real Radio 104.1.
Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Welcome back to Fort Fritz, right here on Real Radio 104.1. We're going to jump into a mythical cryptid creature. This one's odd and confusing and also scary as all heck. It's the Hellhound of Mons. You can download the iHeartRadio app and just search Fort Fritz and Fort Fritz Campfire Tales. We hope you enjoy.
Have you guys ever heard of the Hellhound of Mons?
No, I haven't.
All right, so this account was first published in a story in 1919 in the a evening edition of the Ada News, which was a local Oklahoma newspaper. The story was an account from F.J. Newhouse, a Canadian war veteran, about the mysterious beast that shadowed the barbed wire along the edge of no man's land during World War I.
And no man's land, for my edification, is what?
So, no man's land is basically the area between the trenches of the opposing enemy lines that both sides would
Where the boom
claim
boom
to,
happens.
they would claim to own, but nobody would go out there because they were fearful of what would happen. I mean, typically these areas were highly fortified with yes.
So it's like killing fields, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
if
what
you
it-
walk in, so it's
World War I
It's
was
a
the
legit
first
no
time
man's
that
zone.
modern idea of the machine gun was used, the first time that chemical warfare was used,
The first
time that
mechanized
landmines
killing.
were really used. Yes.
also
like-
planes, right? I think BMW was an airplane
yes,
manufacturer.
they were. Yeah.
War is weird, man.
It really is.
It really is. Okay, I'm going to get all my young people, and I'm going to tell them to go in this trench, and you get all your young people on that trench because we want that area, and you want this area, and so we're just going to have our young people shoot each other.
Deal.
Done. Wow.
Just stupid as
That's
that.
basically what happened.
So, no man's land was also, the area was basically cleared by, mortar shells. There was deep holes. There was dugouts of people trying to get entrenchments to gain ground. It was littered with barbed wire across all of it. And definitely, like I said, it was heavily fortified on either side of the line with weapons that would just tear through any sort of opposing army.
So there were reports of this something like slinking around in this area, a beast.
It's a quote mandated. Let me school you.
Ooh, I like it.
So, where they were fighting, the Battle of Mons was one of the first battles in the World War I. Basically, it was the first clash between the British and the Germans of World War I. And this was in central, southwest Belgium, below Brussels, below the capital. And this incident basically starts with the patrol of 5 men, one Captain Yeskis, and 4 men of the London Fusiliers. A fusil is a light flintlock musket. And
okay.
Basically, so
Musketeers.
embarking on this mission into no man's land.
So
for
it was
patrol.
like light infantry.
Yes, light infantry, very, very small squad going out into no man's land.
All right.
Let's go kill these guys.
They disappeared.
Nice.
Which was nothing unusual considering.
Except war.
It's
Yeah.
war.
Sure.
Exactly.
What happened? They didn't come back. Oh, that's what usually happens.
But the terror began to spread when what happened next. The bodies were discovered several days later, and their throats had been torn from their necks. Their bodies were covered in large gaping tooth marks, and they were mauled, some to the point of unrecognizable. No one could identify their corpses. And shortly after that, one night, both sides' troops, both the Germans and the English, reported hearing a monstrously loud, demonic howling, almost inciting some of the troops to try and retreat from the front lines of this battle.
Pussies.
And over the next 2 years, scores of men lost their lives to going out on patrol through no man's land, with corpses piercing as before. They were gutted, they were mauled, their throats were torn by force. The reports of the screams from either faction suggest that the creature itself had no preference to which side it was. It wasn't fighting for one faction.
Oh, okay.
It would kill indiscriminately, basically.
And that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, that's
So both sides,
not
just
a
be
politically
even-handed.
motivated.
Yeah,
piece.
I like bipartisan
Right.
killing.
so both sides suffered fatalities.
Yes, they
Casualties.
did.
Okay.
Yes. And the roars and howls, they persisted and they occurred more often, further terrifying those who were hidden in the trenches on either side. As soldiers posted on sentry duty began to give eyewitness accounts of a large, slinking, hulking hound that was roaming the perimeters of the barbed wire.
There's a lot of giant wolf things going on tonight.
Yeah, it seems like that. I noticed that
That's
myself.
F***ed up theme, man.
Well, and then one day it just stopped.
Oh,
And no further people died after 2 years
And that's it. Okay, so what
of
do you have to
mounds
talk
and
about?
mounds of body. But the story gets weirder. It gets way more spooky from here.
Oh, geez.
Of course it does.
F.J. Newhouse insisted on the authenticity of his story and the beast in question. So, quote, the death of Dr. Gottlieb Hochmuller in the recent Spartacan riots in Berlin has brought to light facts concerning the fiendish application of this German scientist's skill that have astounded Europe. For the Hound of Mons was not an accident, a phantom, or a hallucination. It was the deliberate result of one of the strangest and most repulsive scientific experiments the world has ever known. That's a direct quote from F.J. Newhouse.
Get out of here!
August
Shut the front
1919
door.
edition of
We
the
already did.
Oklahoma newspaper. So, the experiment that he's talking about involves the aforementioned doctor searching extensively throughout all of the land in mental asylums for a man that had been driven completely insane by his hatred for the country of England.
Wow.
And when he found the perfect candidate, the doctor then proceeded to create a new bioweapon at the behest of the German government by removing the insane man's brain and transplanting it into the body of a scientifically enhanced body, bigger, stronger, faster, just like a...
Yes,
like
I would
a-
watch this
really?
series on
Right.
Hulu,
Man.
totally.
It was like a head transplant.
into the body of a Siberian wolfhound.
This is tight.
Really?
Putting a crazy man's brain into a Siberian wolfhound.
What
which
could go wrong?
On the large side, they were saying that a normal one would be around 105 pounds and 3 feet tall. It's a very large dog. It looks similar to the shape of a greyhound, but much more muscular.
right.
But if it was scientifically enhanced, this thing could be
anything.
5-6 feet tall.
We're talking about super dog.
Weapon K9.
Have you guys seen like cane corsos?
Oh yeah.
The Romans, they look like small tanks, all muscle. The Romans would put armor on it and would have it charge like advancing
Yeah.
like enemies.
Why don't they just get armadillos?
But they're like 7 feet tall, like on their back legs, and they look like steroid bulls.
That's why.
Damn.
Yep.
Anyhow, they said that this new creature was then ruthlessly trained to hunt British troops on the battlefield and
How
then
do you
was
train a
released.
crazy dog hybrid?
I don't know, man.
What do you
This is
feed
I'm
it
just
as
telling
like
you the
positive
story.
reinforcement? Like, here's a English baby. I mean, what do you do?
A pocket full of treats.
So, anyways, they trained this creature to hate the British and kill them on the battlefield. And then
You
they released
really
it.
need to be trained to hate
I'm
the
jumping
British.
right back into the story. I'm jumping back in there, Daddy.
Do it, Nick Spry. Do it.
So they released it into no man's land, and the Germans obviously didn't think that this thing was going to turn on them and kill their own soldiers.
What? Okay, yeah.
But it did.
Yeah.
And so the rumors spread that even that the scientist had made his fur and skin impervious to gunfire, to bullets.
Oh.
and
Luke Cage
that
wolf.
his emotions
Wow.
had been manipulated and enhanced to increase his hatred with chemicals.
Just got him liquored up, sauced up.
So it's like just strictly tequila.
It's a drug-induced hellhound. What could possibly go wrong?
I don't know.
This is the best story
Yeah,
ever.
no, this is great.
But there is no evidence of the doctor's existence or of Captain Yes's.
Son of a bitch.
None of it has been purported, nor have any of Newhouse's claims been substantiated. And yet, none have been denied.
Exactly. It's like the CIA.
And no one knows what really happened with the Hellhound of Mons.
I love it.
That was awesome.
love it.
That's
like,
a great story.
That's a great story because it's like there's almost romance behind it. Like it killed everybody.
What the
but
hell is your idea of romance?
It's like the lake house with
Remind
Sandra
me to
Bullock
stay away
and
from your
Keanu
house on
Reeves. And like a
Valentine's
giant.
Day.
It could still be out there.
Yeah, it's like It's like a Frankenstein, like a World War I flavored Frankenstein. He was like created for a purpose, but like, he didn't really understand it, so he just killed everything. Like, he didn't realize it was only supposed to be English people. And also, like, don't put it past the Germans to do some like weird, funky shit like that, right? Like, don't immediately discount it just because it sounds really off the wall.
Never discount weird, funky German shit.
Yeah, no.
You're listening to Real Radio 104.1.
Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Welcome back to Fort Fritz. Fritz here with you. This next story is very peculiar because it involves something that a lot of people think is absolutely terrifying, and that's cults. Cults and any kind of mind control. This one in particular is the Superior Universal Alignment Cult. This one was written by Kaz, and you can find it on the iHeartRadio app. Just download it and search Fort Fritz or Fort Fritz Campfire Tales.
I actually, this is actually reminding me a lot of the Superior Universal Alignment.
The thing you were talking about reminded you of something?
Yes.
No, not you. You on behalf of
exactly.
you.
This one's not getting it.
He doesn't get it. He doesn't.
It's not. It's going to be a problem.
We don't.
Hopefully, this story will help you understand.
Thank you.
We don't want to.
Listen, we is not a pronoun that exists in this plane.
Thank
all right?
you.
Thank you.
Well, that's
Doesn't
it
exist.
does on this plane. We exist on this plane.
Nope.
Let me tell you about this Superior Universal Alignment cult. Started by a Miss Valentina de Andrade, which is Argentinian in origin. Sounds Italian, but the woman is from Argentina. She's Argentine.
Argentine.
Yeah, it's like a fruit.
So sweet Argentine plum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of tangy.
So Valentina was around 1981, was starting to gain prominence in a very remote part of the Amazon jungle in Brazil as a clairvoyant. And she was providing, I guess, eerily accurate readings for local people regarding situations they were having or the future or whatever. She was the local seer of that place in the Amazon, which is the Amazonian town of Altamira.
High lookout, right? Pretty much like
there you
high
go.
High view. Top
high view.
view.
Yeah.
You with the big
Overwatch.
brain.
But so that would be in Spanish, which Brazilian, Portuguese.
How weird. Oh, well, okay, I thought you said Argentina.
Well, she is Argentinian, but this took
that's
place in the
Brazil.
Amazonian area of Altamira.
Okay.
Valentina began basically in 1981 claimed to have had a breakthrough revelation that she had been contacted by extraterrestrials, and they had given her this divine knowledge about how to escape the impending destruction of Earth that was going to take place in 1989.
It's always that.
Wow.
It's always that. They've always got a good specific date.
It's a good like motivational tool. You go around and tell people like, hey, none of this matters anymore. Do what I say. And enough lost people are probably going to fall in line.
That exact line of thinking, though, makes people go, no, none of this really does matter, and then they end up dying, which kind of like goes into that psychology of you, God, what is it called when you make something happen?
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Thank you. Self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I were to tell someone, hey, look, give away all of your money, it doesn't matter. You might be dead in a couple months, a couple years, or you might come back from that. But if you believe that, that's exactly your reality.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Nostradamus predicted the day of his death. I'm like, well, that's pretty easy to do if
if
you're
you
willing to
decide,
commit.
if you write your death in a planner,
And then-
and kind of like make motions to kill yourself that day, it's probably going to happen.
Good
Yeah.
chance.
6 a.m. buy sheet cake. 7 a.m. dead.
Right suicide
Dead.
note.
Yeah.
That's a good way to go.
Sheet cake.
Leave
Yeah,
a cake for whoever finds you, right? Like, not make it such a terrible thing. Like,
Hey, I'm dead, but here's cake.
here's a cake. Like, use it for the, whatever. Like,
Do you leave it in the fridge and leave a note that's like, look in the fridge?
You know how long it's going to be.
it's like a super 70 kind of note to get. Like, do I even want to look in the fridge? Like, what the f***'s in the fridge?
What's in the fridge? What's in the fridge?
They open it up.
Go
and
look in the P.S. Go look in the fridge.
I would never open that damn fridge. I'd be like, no, not opening the fridge.
Okay. So Valentina also wrote a book, which I like. I enjoy the title of this book. God, the big farce.
Nice.
So she basically, the crux of her message was that people needed to shed the negative energies of life in order to be buoyant enough to get on the spaceship to go to, whatever place that they were going to go after Earth was destroyed in 1989. So part of that gospel was to leave your children behind. Children were a source of negative energy, which we can all agree is a thing. And they needed to cast aside their children so that they could be lifted into the spaceship.
You're free-range kids now.
So she got several people to do this, and I don't know if there's an exact number on.
I think they just hated their kids.
I mean, that's another good.
Do you hate your kids? Join our cult. We got it.
That's another good motivational tool, right? Yeah,
Probably,
the world's gonna end, and also you don't need kids. Like, oh, this dude's got a good package. This is a good pitch, sir.
He's got it all. Checking all the boxes.
What a crazy mindset to just look at this life that you've created and just say, like, if I had one sandwich, I'm eating all of it. You know, like thinking of this child as like, it's holding me down. I got to get rid of my children.
Oh yeah,
like
we're throwing all this out. No more mortgage, no more kids, no more car payment.
That's it. Like
I'm going out into the Amazon. Valentina's got the answer. Again, the one of the core pillars, sort of casting aside your children, but more specifically that children, for some reason, Valentina wouldn't share with other people that children born after 1981 were especially evil and needed to be cast off immediately and didn't need to be around anyone. And even more specifically, boys born after 1981.
Ooh.
They were evil, as she put them.
Kind of agree.
Yeah.
I can agree. Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
Yes.
1981 through 1989, she had a pretty successful cult following, and there was just sort of people leaving their families behind and going to kind of get ready for 1989, which is going to be the end of days.
Good for her.
Right?
Yeah.
So far, not too terrible. But in 1989, it comes and then it goes, right? And then we're into 1990, and there's then the members of the cult have to kind of reconcile what they've done with this like doctrine of what they thought was going to happen, and what they came up with was that they hadn't lived their lives to the fullest. They hadn't done enough to get on this spaceship to leave Earth, and that they needed to purge more evil from Earth. To get onto the spaceship.
What did they define as evil? What did they kind of take as like, oh, well, that's okay, and no, that's bad. Don't
being
do that.
born after 1981 as a male was enough to be evil.
Okay. That answers my question. That theory checks out.
When were you born, Kaz?
1986.
Checks out. Checks out.
It makes sense.
Yep.
I wouldn't say I'm evil. I'm just like, I don't really care. So between 1989 and 1993, 19 children disappeared and 5 corpses were found.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, it took a dark turn, didn't it? You're all chuckly. The crimes were horrific. We're not going to go into the details. You can look it up if you want to, but
we'll be getting into that later.
Yeah, it was there was some
horrific. Hold on.
Some very horrific things that were done to these boys, and I guess one thing that I will share is that apparently they were used for harvesting of certain organs to be sold to a black market dealer, and this was part of how they were sort of generating funds for this cult.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can get rid of half of a liver, or like a part of a liver. You could at least get rid of one kidney.
I'll give you a kidney and a pinky.
Isn't that crazy?
This is nuts.
That's insane.
We need to cut this out.
Thinking of it like that.
Well, every church needs an organ player.
Yeah.
So most of the children were, identified as indigent or previously missing, etc. But one boy actually escaped. His name was Juan de Clay Pinheiro. He was 9 years old, and he escaped and actually managed to name several of his attackers and prominent members of the cult, and arrests were made. He named several doctors, several wealthy local land barons, policemen, and he also named Valentina also as sort of the mastermind of this operation. 4 of the men were immediately arrested, and by 2005 or 2003, I apologize, they were put on trial and convicted. Valentina, however, was acquitted of the charges during the trial based on an alibi, which placed her out of the area during the murders.
And that was something that was, I guess, held up.
So this happened in 2003. This is 15 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, but they probably had some kind of evidence that exonerated her, at least.
Well,
right?
so
Or
from
backed
what
up her claim?
from my research, it seems like this is the Charles Manson defense, right? Like she
Oh, yeah.
had people do things, but she didn't herself do the things.
Interesting.
Which, according to the boy who escaped, that was not true. He said that they had she was a participant.
That's crazy.
So yeah, it was. She apparently. I actually looked this up. I did a little bit more research than I normally do, and I looked up their website. There's this cult is still active. They're trying to recruit members. They kind of try to distance themselves from the allegations. But yeah, I tried to check it out, and the site is garbage. Like you literally can't click on anything. It's like they thought the world was going to end in 1989, and that was the end of internet technology. Like no further web development was done on that.
Wow.
It's
like the Space Jam
It's an
site?
angel site. It's like an Angel Fire site or whatever.
Nice.
It's like legit. Like
GeoCities.
terrible.
Can you click anywhere on it and then just do Control A and just see like where they thought links should have gone, and you can click on
Ooh, I didn't even
things,
think
like-
about like getting in there and like getting into the Dom team with the and maybe get like, ooh, we can find her.
Oh.
Is this part of the story or
No, this is just ooze. These are like
That's a
additional
thought right
ooze.
there.
Ooh.
I didn't even
Fort
think about
Fritz investigates.
Okay, so no, yeah. So she was acquitted in 2003 and is sought by Brazilian and Argentinian police, but remains at large. Apparently, still holds several sermons in apparently Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Wow.
That's
Still
capital,
preaching
right?
the same stuff? Still saying Jesus is an alien and boys are bad?
I don't know that. I believe that she's tried to soften the message
Pivot.
a little bit. But yeah, the essential idea is that our religions are a farce, and that she has been given this like exclusive glimpse into what's really going to happen.
Why? Okay, number one, why does she care? And that, like, what is she getting out of this? Just to tell people she's going to be right? Or
Well, no,
is
there
it-
was like your classic cult sort of like economic exploitation of like donate X amount of your money, sell all your stuff, give it to us. Like
Gotcha.
these people were living lavish lifestyles based on the earnings they were getting from the cult members. This is all very sort of similar. When I actually say it all like that, it kind of sounds like weird. Maybe I don't necessarily want to. I'm gonna take off the robe. I'm at least gonna take off the robe.
But you look so good in it. You look so
It's
I
pretty
popped
good.
it open,
adorbs.
and
How
I
did
did
you
like
get her direct measurements? It's weird.
Did you measure me?
I've been hanging out with you guys a long time now. Every time I hug,
You're listening to Real Radio 104.1.
Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Welcome back to Fort Fritz. Fritz here with you. And this next one was written by yours truly. Myself, me, Fritz. This one is Nature vs. Nurture, Identical Strangers. And it's very odd. This one deals with adoption and how a pair of triplets found out they were all related and the odd way they found that information out. Have you guys heard of Identical Strangers?
Is that like an album by like David Bowie and
I
Bob
would say, like,
Seger?
No.
The Who?
No.
Sounds like a The Who album.
Angela, do you have any?
Am I gonna throw out a classic rock album?
Yes.
Possible?
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe it could have been Genesis. I don't know.
Well, all three
That
are
makes
wrong.
sense, kind of.
All three are wrong.
Well,
but Identical Strangers was a
Actually, it's a
book.
Deep Purple album. It
Is it
was.
really?
It actually was.
Is it really?
I was checking. I could hear the song in my head. I'm like, what the is it?
Identical Strangers is a book written by Elise Shine when she found out she had an identical twin sister.
Weird.
So she wrote the book Identical Strangers, not to be confused with the beloved American sitcom that ran for 8 seasons from March 25th, 1986 to 1993 on the ABC television network, starring, of course, Mark Lynn Baker and Bronson Pinchot.
Of course,
As
Bronson
Balky.
Pinchot.
As
As
Balky.
Balky.
Is that what people say when they say Valky? Is that what they
They go,
mean? Valky.
cut
Yeah,
it
Bronson
out. Right? Wasn't that?
Something like
Yeah, I
that.
think
Pinchot.
anyway.
I like Bronson
So,
Pinchot.
from it on.
On the wings of a dream. How do I know that? I've never seen this. Standing.
Something is happening here, man.
I have
Something special was happening in this room.
What's going on?
So,
Did we just start a Perfect Strangers?
I think you did.
Identical Strangers is the story of Elise Shine when she met her identical twin sister, Paula Bernstein. But the story that I would like to focus on also has roots in how and why these identical twins are reuniting. So it all takes place July 12th, 1961. A teenage mother gives birth to 4 children. One was stillborn. Of the 3 triplets, they were then adopted by different families.
Whoa,
And
wait a minute. So this was a natural birth.
This was a natural birth.
She had
Quadruplets.
She had-
I was like, what is
Yep.
the 4 word?
Quadruple.
And
Yep.
Latin? Like,
So she gave birth to 3 children
So horrible.
who were all kind of like doled out by this prestigious adoption agency called Louise Wise. So it was Louise, Louise Wise, WISE. And these 3 children were given to an affluent family, a middle class family, and a blue collar family.
It's like a Dickens story.
Yeah, definitely. What happened was Bobby, and his name is
Bobby.
Robert?
Robert. Yeah, so Bobby, who is Robert Shaffron, he went to college, and the first day he stepped foot on the campus, people started coming up going, "Hey, so good to see you again," kissing him on the cheek, hugging him, and he's like,
Wait, this sounds kind of familiar. What just
Okay.
happened here?
and he starts walking through the dorm, and someone knocks on his open door and says, "Oh my God, you're back, Eddie!" And he turns around and looks at his friend, who said immediately, I was like, "You're not Eddie," but it looked just like Eddie. The friend then had Bobby call his friend Eddie and say, "My friend thinks that I look just like you." And on the other end of the line, he heard his own voice going, "Okay." And he goes, "Were you born in New York City?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Were you adopted?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Was your birthday July 12th?" And he goes, "Yes." And he goes,
stop.
"Which adoption agency?" And he goes, "Hold on. Ma!" And he goes, "It sounded just like me calling back." And he comes back and says, "Louise Wise." So it makes
Oh,
international
no way.
news.
Wow.
Bobby and Eddie. So Eddie is Bobby is Robert Shaffron, and Eddie is Edward Galland, and they immediately make international headlines as these 2 long lost twins.
That's crazy.
Then David Kellman also phones, I think, the Galland family and says, "My friends say that I look just like you," and they all said the hands, because like they're all like hand on shoulder photograph in every newspaper, the hands. And when he said he saw it, he was like, "Oh my God," raced out, bought another newspaper, saw the same hands, and he's like, "Those are my hands." Like
They have giant claws. They had these huge claws.
They were lobsters.
They were big boys. And then he called, and the Galland family's matriarch answered and said, "Honey," turns around and says, "They're coming out of the woodworks." So soon,
Oh my God.
overnight, these triplets found out that they were separated at birth, and this was an international headline story. It made like international papers. They were on the Phil Donahue show.
Yeah.
Like
When you're on
every,
Donahue, it's big time.
It's huge.
ABC, you name it. I think CNN, because this was in the 80s at the time, early 80s.
Fake news.
They are overnight sensations, but their family has questions. So they arrange a meeting at the Louise Wise agency offices in Manhattan. I think Manhattan, could be another borough, but they all were told, well, if you get presented with triplets, a lot of households can't take triplets. So we doled them out. Here's the kicker, though. Each of the families, the Galland, the Kellman, and the Shaffron family, all had daughters that they adopted from the Louise Wise agency.
So they all had prior Louise Wise agency adoptions.
They're repeat customers?
And now they are each getting a set of triplets, and they didn't know it at the time.
It's like a BOGO.
Oh, whoa.
They're having a BOGO special.
So they were told if, it's really hard to just unload 3 bouncing baby boys to one family. So they had to dole them out, and they're like, that doesn't make any sense because we would have gladly taken them. Again, there's one affluent family, one middle class, and one just blue collar, And they said, well, it doesn't work that way. One father, as he was leaving, said, oh, wait, I forgot my coat or his umbrella, walked back in and saw the Louise Wise agency opening up champagne and pouring themselves champagne flutes.
Yeah, I love that part.
So they all smoke the same brand of cigarettes. They all have the same like in women. They all answer at the same time. True. They say true or yes, or they say definitely, absolutely. The same inflection in their voice. When Phil Donahue turned around and said, look, they're even all sitting in the exact same... Yeah. At the same time, they all crossed right over left legs, and the audience was like, what? So the documentary that I watched that CNN, go ahead and say it.
Fake news.
Produced is called Three Identical Strangers. It came out in 2018. It's directed by Tim Wardle and, again, stars Edward Gallen, David Kellman, and Robert Shafran, these 3 triplets. One of the most telling areas of the research is that this was intentional. This was the Jewish Board of Guardians.
It's a hard check.
What?
That's the most amazing reaction ever.
Whoa.
Jewish? Whoa.
So the...
I was going to ask, were they all Jewish? From, the Louise Wise...
Yeah, that's a good question. So Louise Wise is a very prestigious Jewish family adoption center.
I was going to say all their last
I never
names
thought
sounded
of there being
very
a Jewish-centric adoption center.
But it makes
Makes
sense.
a lot of sense,
Yeah.
They were all doled out, by the Jewish Board of Guardians under the direction of a Dr. Peter B. Neubauer, who specializes in mental illness. Now, Elise Schein and Paula Bernstein, they found out during the making of this documentary that their mother had schizophrenia. When they went back and reviewed the triplets' biological mother, she had a lot of addiction problems.
Okay.
Unfortunately, one of the brothers, Eddie Galland, commits suicide. He was kind of bipolar. The understanding is that Dr. Neubauer they were trying to document how each child was being upraised to document nature versus nurture.
Right.
Oh, nice.
Because they have a lot of things in common, but again, they all met each other at the age of 19. They were full-ass grown adults, and they had a lot of differences. And it is an absolutely compelling documentary, but it doesn't end on a good note. But there are arguments for both nature and nurture in this, which I think is weird.
Sorry if you mentioned this. Which family did Eddie grow up in?
Eddie grew
What
up...
was his background?
He was the middle-class family with a disciplinarian father.
Okay.
And he had mental health issues. The craziest thing is that they were all documented and filmed at various points in their life. They all lived within 100 miles radius of one another, and they were filmed doing tests for aptitude tests and things like that.
Wow.
But
And
the tests were actually part of the experiment. The experiment continued throughout their lives. They didn't know it. They're still coming back, checking on them, and they'd act like, oh, this is for your school or something like that. No, it was from them testing.
So even their parents didn't even know that
Didn't even
that's
know.
what they're doing.
Yeah.
There are still...
It's creepy as hell.
Am I alone in thinking that that's just badass? It's not. It is. It is creepy, but it's also a really good science experiment, right? If you would have, someone probably had that idea, but they're like, "No, dude, we can't separate a bunch of triplets and twins from."
That would be the only way to do it.
You would have to do it secretly like that.
Right,
yeah.
Otherwise, it's that's
hold
tainted.
my mochaccino, fam, and then you like split up this entire family of people, and then monitor them their whole lives.
It's
cool.
draconian
It's terrible.
and terrible. Yeah,
It's cool, but draconian.
This is really weird.
Learn some stuff.
There's probably 6 to 8 other sets of twins or triplets in the United States born between 1960 and 1980 that don't know they have someone else out there that looks just like them. So the documentary ends with, imagine walking down a street in New York City and turning the corner and it just goes black. And you're face to face with an Angela. I'm just saying.
She's used to that.
Happens to me all the time.
That happened to her, just happened to her like 5 minutes ago.
This is mistaken identity.
Bungalow on the Bus is up next. We will see you next week. On behalf of Fort Fritz, have a good evening.
Until next time, pleasant dreams.